Time's up.
Yes, please.
Good morning. I wanted to welcome you all here and just make a couple of announcements. Good morning. That's your clue to end your conversation. Thank you. If you have someone in your office or someone in your locality that you know is watching remotely today, we had to send a new link. So send them a quick text that says check, it went by email, check for your new link, okay? Other just housekeeping announcements before we start. I realize that everyone is busy, and I realize that you may get a call because a lot of offices are empty today because everybody's here because we have some really important things to learn. If you have a call, I am going to ask you to please leave the room. First of all, silence your phones, and secondly, if you want or need to have a conversation, please leave the room. It's out of respect for others that are here. It may be important to you, it's not important to them, okay? So that's, and restrooms, if you haven't found them, when you come up the stairs or off the elevator, you came right into this room, go left to the restrooms. And we are going to try to get through our board meeting, our annual meeting, so that there'll be a break. There's not one scheduled. If you looked at the agenda, don't panic. We wanted to be fluid about when the break would be, but we're planning on having a break before we do the panel on the MAMC board, okay? So I'd like to call this meeting to order, and if you will all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. I will entertain a motion.
We just suspend roll call.
Okay. If you, Kukowski, motion, Sechrist, support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Roll call is suspended. You received at your table the June 2nd, 2001 annual meeting minutes. I apologize for not getting them sent out to you. We were already flooding your mailbox. So if I will entertain, well, Lisa, where's Lisa? She's at the table working. Our secretary's at the table. But I would entertain a motion. Leanne Scott and Jackie Boudry. I'm going to write these down because Lisa's not in here. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. My report's relatively brief. We've put important dates on the bottom of the agenda. Please take it home and put it on your calendar because we hope that you will join us for every educational opportunity that MAMC offers. That is the soul of what our organization is about, is education of our clerks, and secondly, about legislative issues and lobbying for legislative changes that we as an organization need to do our jobs as best as possible. The other thing, we were invited to have an advisory seat, which is all via email or electronic, on the U.S. Election Assistance Commission for local input. So the state had one clerk, municipal clerk, and one county clerk. And the board nominated me to fill that role, so I will be doing that, and I'm very appreciative and grateful of that honor. And I'll do a treasurer's report now, Leanne.
Can you speak up? It's difficult to hear in the back. And my name?
Yes, ma'am. I've never been known to be.
Okay, good morning, everybody. This is my first year on the board and as treasurer, so I'm going to, can you hear me? Yep. That's better. Okay, so we started off the year with a little over $187,500. Our deposits and credits are $110,337. The withdrawals were $233,498. Now, remember that we did have a wonderful year last year, right, with COVID, so a lot of things were canceled. So memberships and whatnot that were paid the year before, or dues for institute and all of that, were received last year's revenue and then expensed this year. So if you don't see the higher numbers coming in on revenue, that's why. So our end balance, our total funds are $97,186.38, and that's where we're moving forward with right now. So if somebody would like to move the treasurer's report, make a motion for that.
Move to receive. Second. Thompson.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. To accept the treasurer's report. Those opposed? Motion carried. I did forget one thing. I'm going to ask for a moment of silence. One of our own died this week. Jennifer Stevenson, who is the elections director, and she was supposed to be with us today, for the city of Montague. She was a 38-year-old mother, musician. She was hit by a driver who ran a stop sign and T-boned her Monday morning. She was taking her daughter to school, and her daughter is also in the hospital in serious condition. Her mother was the city clerk in Montague, Melinda O'Connell. Some of you may know her mother. But if we could have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Ways and Means Committee report, Michael?
Hello, everybody. Michael Seegers, I am the Director for Ways and Means. Thank you all for being here. The board, I have a kind of a brief, we're going to go over proposed bylaws amendments. I have a brief writing or memo that we submitted to the membership July 26th. I'm just going to read through that quickly, and then we'll go through the bylaws amendments. Dear member, the Board of Directors for the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks voted to approve for recommendation the attached bylaw amendments on July 22nd, 2021. We are providing written notice of the proposed amendments in accordance with Article 12 of the bylaws. At the annual board meeting in June, President Clark identified challenges with the current process for establishing qualifications to serve as president of the MAMC. Due to increased turnover in the field, it was recommended that we amend the bylaws to streamline the detailed requirements for, quote, moving through the chairs in the organization. A simplification was recommended in that the requirement for the second and third vice president positions no longer have established duties. Instead, individuals in these positions would be allowed to perform any director position established in the bylaws. As a result, the duties that were exclusively reserved for second and third vice chairs, or second and third presidents, vice presidents, have been established as standalone directorships. This allows directors to pursue the president role without being required to follow an exhaustively detailed process, and should help with recruitment and retention of board members. Additionally, the proposed amendments establish consistent grammatical formatting, allow for permissive scheduling deemed necessary, especially after last year's COVID restrictions that caused us to change our timeline for the annual conference, and it actually, that was the least of everything that got adjusted. Update terminology based on existing standing rules and practices, and allow for the specific tasks of chairing the legislative committee and overseeing internal communications to be exercised by generic director position. Other director position duties have been refined to conform to current practice. This is the largest proposed amendment to the bylaws to date, and is our first wholesale attempt at house cleaning since their adoption in 2008.
I want to add, one of the concerns in discussing with people, encouraging them to get in the track to take a leadership position in MAMC is not everybody is madly in love with technology, and to have to do like third vice's responsibilities under the existing bylaws is you're responsible for Facebook and for the web page and that kind of thing. Or if you don't live, or your passion is not legislation, which is second vice's current job is to chair legislative committee, then you don't want, people don't want to get in the track because they don't want to do those specific tasks. So this still lets us have the commitment of time so that you learn everything, third vice, second vice, first vice president, but it allows a variety of people. So third vice might be a dual role, for example, with the treasurer. If the treasurer wants to go through the chairs and become president, it doesn't tie us, those committees, to a specific process. So I hope that makes sense to you. The red line was sent to you, and that's what we're going to show. If this all gets approved, you'll have a final new copy on the webpage soon.
All right. Yeah, so if we want to go through, page 2 is a minor change. We have a code of ethics and conduct, not a code of professional ethics and conduct, and so we're just going to make sure that that is consistent with our standing rules.
Okay. Here.
You got it.
Okay.
Sorry. Yep.
I'm gonna try to keep up here, so.
Melanie, you're doing great so far. So section 8, there in our little table of contents, we are removing the word professional. We are not taking away the professionalism, just the specific language. All right, and that's the only modification proposed in the table of contents, and we will get into detail about that as we go through. There's no change to Article 1, Article 2, until you get to in Article 3, when you get to Section 8, is our first red line there is where you see the Code of Ethics and Conduct recommendation. Again, in that next paragraph, you see that would be the Code of Ethics and Conduct. And then on the third paragraph there, Code of Ethics and Conduct, to make it consistent with our Standing Rule 47, not an overly controversial change. Article 4, from the Board of Directors. This modification to the language, increasing, by adding the language 9 additional directorships, that's just what's required to make the change for the first and the second vice president roles to be standing directors.
You said 9, but it shows 8 up there.
Okay, so the modification, so what we have right now is not the final version. This was, so when we sent them out, and part of the reason we sent them out to the general membership is for you to read them over, and thankfully enough, Pam from Farmington Hills counted the directorships and realized that when we were making the first proposed amendments, we did not modify the correct number of directors. So that was added by one of the general membership between our mailing it out to everybody in July and then what we would be approving today. So it's kind of a clerical fix-up, and there's two of them. So thank you for bringing that up. If we want to go through, we can individually count each directorship to ensure that Pam was correct. I assure you I did, and the appropriate number is 9 as opposed to 8 additional directors. But thank you for that. So section number 4, when we go down, there are, the next page, as we had amended the bylaws over a series of years, and we'll see at the end how many times we amended the bylaws. Sometimes we use the word first, sometimes we use the abbreviation for first, and sometimes, and so we use 3 different formats, and so, go ahead.
Sorry, but if you back up to section 3.
Yeah. You can go back 1 page.
So, the 8 is listed throughout this, that there's 4 city and 4 township, the 8 additional besides the vice president and president. I think 8 is correct. It says 8 additional directors besides the vice president.
It doesn't account.
I think you're missing the half for the past president.
Yeah, it's not really a director, so it is 8.
Okay, so we're going to strike Pam's recommended modification. And we're going to go with what was presented to the membership.
Can we clarify why the past president is technically not a director?
Beautiful.
In case you didn't hear, the past president, I think Pam was counting the past president, who is not a director. So they're still on the board and they're a voting member of the board. They are not a director. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So we'll stick with.
This is why we don't do codifications.
Okay. All right. Let me move down then to section 4. So this is a pretty generic one. If we're going to use the word first, I just want to use the word first throughout the entire thing and not kind of switch formats. So that's that recommended change. And I won't go over each and every one of those. As you get down to president, we decided to update some language there. Right, okay, so we've got, under the first vice president there, we removed the gendered language there. Under the second vice president, you start to see the redlining of the change. Under second vice president, instead of them being the chair of the legislative committee and a voting member on CEO, we're striking that. The second vice president shall be appointed to a director position by the president, and that's not overly controversial because the bylaws indicate that the president appoints all of the directorships and the committee chairs, and that's in section 6 above. The third vice president, we're striking the specific requirements that they be an internal communications chair, essentially, or director. All of those specific tasks have been removed. The third vice president shall be appointed to a director position by the president. And then directly underneath, you have the addition of that language plus a better description of what the legislative director would do, taken from the standing rules. And that language is proposed here. This director shall serve as chair of the legislative committee and be a voting member of the CEO. That's a direct transition of the language. This director shall work in conjunction with the appointed lobbyist. This director may testify before the legislature based on determination of the MAMC. This director shall regularly inform the board of directors of positions on bills, including notification prior to testifying on behalf of the MAMC. And then for internal communications, this is what we label all of what the third vice president used to do. This director shall serve as chair of the publications committee, serve as coordinator, editor of the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks newsletter, shall be responsible for the distribution and publication of the newsletter at least quarterly. The director shall be responsible for all other publications of the association, of the association, such as special flyers, promotional material, etc. This director is also responsible for updating and maintaining the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks website and social media. This director shall be responsible for media public relations of the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks and shall forward all appropriate documents for publication in the association newsletter.
Take the mic off.
That last line is a rule that is being taken from the Director of Ways and Means. I was able to pawn that off on Stephanie, but it was consistent with kind of her role, in that position role in communications was the idea. Here, we changed our professional certification designation from the CMMC to the MAMC, and so we just now made sure that we codified that in our, put that into our bylaws. That's the recommended change there. As we get down to, there's that Ways and Means, right? There's the little on-off to the other directorship of that role. And removing public relations from the Ways and Means Committee chair. Under Director of the Education Committee, we updated the language. It was extremely detailed, yet not practical. It's not something that we currently do, so we removed that language. The board recommended removing that language, knowing that we would still work with the IAMC and we would continue to provide educational and coordinate educational programming for municipal clerks. Also, I think the State Election Accreditation Committee may not be currently in operation, I think was one of the discussions that the board had at the time. So we removed that language. Director of Education Committee. So as you move down, then the next one was Secretary. We updated the language here to make it consistent with changes to technology. Things have moved electronically, so we can have electronic minutes, and as I'm sure many of you are aware, under state law, synopsises can be on your website, and you can just put in the legal notice that you've got it on the website. Our synopsis of minutes is going to be on the website. That's kind of just updating us to the 21st century there with regard to how the secretary does the minutes. And we eliminated, oh, before we keep going, there's one last thing. We're no longer, right there, you're good. The secretary shall be responsible to order and distribute the association stationery. We don't have stationery, so we just got to pull that out. There's a couple things in here, it happens. It's, they're a couple decades old. And as you go down here, this gets into the qualifications when we're in section 8. This is kind of what the expectations are of board members. We modified the process for asking to be excused from a board meeting. We removed the requirement that the request to be absent be in writing. And we removed the 24-hour requirement in case something happens from an emergency standpoint. So we go from kind of 3 rules to meet the criteria of an excuse to 2 rules. I don't know if that's overly controversial. I appreciate that, having 2 kids. Section 10, we're getting back to that consistency in how we label the directorships and the presidency positions. Section 11, we are going to, and I don't have it here, but under Section 11, election of directors, elections shall be the responsibility of, and it says here, the past president's committee. We actually removed that committee. That committee doesn't exist, and so it's going to be, it's the nominating committee. That's one modification that we have. And then right now the past president's committee is basically just Chris Swoll. And then under elections shall take place, we put annually as opposed to the June conference because we had to make an emergency switch last year, obviously. And so, and then our conference was held jointly with IAMC. So because of COVID, we thought this is a great time to remove some unnecessary specificity in the bylaws that could really tie us down to some kind of inconsequential calendar landmarks. No other changes are recommended. Nothing for Article 5. Nothing for Article 6. Now we're gonna get into Article 7. That committee, right? Chris is still gonna participate, but that past president's committee is then removed. And there's that nominating committee right there we talked about earlier. That's already in the bylaws. That's the recommended change there. Article 9, no change. Article 10, no change. Article 11, no change. Article 12, amendments, no change. Severability. Article 13, there is no change. There's the old clerk of Canton Township. Apparently she was treasurer when they created these bylaws. And then at the bottom, there's a summary. So these are all the summaries of the amendments over the years. See, all kind of minor things. And then you get to our proposed red line summary, which is a little bit more, I'm known for being wordy, but formatting, grammatical changes, articles, so this is all of the description of what I kind of went over today. Eliminating specific requirements for the second and third vice chairs, create 2 additional directors to cover the duties, legislative and internal communications, updating the name of the professional certification program, remove public relations and media from Ways and Means, specific tasks for education committee, and updating secretary duties to conform with updated procedure, the excused absence process, removing June as set month for conference, and then Article 7, eliminating past president's committee, and that would be September 1, 2021. If this is approved today, that is today's date. Okay?
Thank you, Michael. Does anyone have questions? As you can see, a lot of it was housekeeping, things that needed to happen. The meat of what we are changing is that mandated second vice and third vice roles so that we have flexibility for our members in order to get into this track. So do I have any questions or comments about the proposed bylaw changes? Michael, would you like to make a motion?
So moved.
Is there support? Support by Lewinsky. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. You all just want to make sure you get a break. Tina, if you could do a membership report, please.
Good morning, I have a short, sweet report of you. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Now we can.
Okay, good. MAMC has 830 active members, 19 of which are life members, 16 honorary, 5 associate, which gives us 870 members total for 2021, and that's an increase of 34 members just from last month. That's my report, thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Conference, Holly. She's our party coordinator. She makes conference so much fun. Here we go.
Maybe just hold it like.
How do you get out of here? Ooh, there we go.
Okay, so how great is it to see everybody in person? Yes. That's so awesome. I'm so excited to see everybody's face today. So I'd like to introduce our new conference vice chair, Ms. Rebecca Johnson. She can stand. Briefly, our 2022 conference will be at the Grand Traverse Resort in Acme, Michigan, up in by Traverse City. That will be from June 13th through the 17th. We have Clerking 101 June 13th and 14th, and Masterclass on June 14th. Our tagline this year is Clerks Standing Together for a Stronger Michigan. Don't you just get goosebumps? Like, so we're going to be all about unity this year. Just keeping together and working together and trying to coordinate with everything going on. so that we're standing together, and I think that'll be really important going forward. So, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Holly. When we were at our board retreat and I announced that I basically had a concept of we are one, I have testified or met with policy committees over 20 times since February, dealing with the legislation that's hanging out there, and we'll talk about that more. Jackie and I will later. But I kept trying to emphasize to the legislators, the representatives and the senators, that we are a very widely varied organization. We have many clerks that have one precinct, we have clerks that have over 70 precincts, and that everything fits everybody. And so as they made these proposed changes, I was asking them to please take into consideration that while we are all different, elected, appointed, Dem, Republican, independent, city, township, we all have one common goal, and that is to protect and advance the right to vote of our citizens. And so I kept saying this over and over and over in committee, and how important it is to protect our democracy, that I decided that has to be this year, with all of the things and all of how we were all thrown into question and our integrity was questioned last year, and still spilling into this year, that we had to come together and defend each other and support each other. So that's the history behind our theme for this year, because I do truly believe we all have the right thing motivating us in the right heart. So I thank you all for your work that you do. It's been just a really tough 18 months, all of the things that we've had to face, but we have done it. You have pulled together, and we are super proud of our profession, and we're really proud of all of the clerks that make up MAMC. Education, Melanie.
So good morning again, everybody. We're so excited, just like Holly said, it's great to see everybody in person. We had Institute a few months ago. Was it a few months ago already? And it was amazing. It was amazing to see clerks, getting together and networking. And it's just nice to be back in person, as long as we're all staying safe and so on. So just to kind of go over, well, first, Rochelle Enbody is the Education Vice Chair. Rochelle is at the front table right now at sign-in. Oh, she's right here. So can you stand up, Rochelle? This is Rochelle Enbody. She's our Vice Chair. Or your Vice Chair. Rochelle has been amazing. These education events, let me tell you, are not an easy task. So without the support of the board and the vice chair, as well as GCSI, Tara and Taylor, there's no way that we'd be able to pull this off. So we appreciate all your patience when signing up for this event. We had our old website. We had a lot of glitches with that, and we had to kind of lay down some ground rules about registrations and stuff. We do have a new website. And there's still some glitches with that too, but we're working through them, and it's going to be amazing. So we appreciate your patience with the registration process for this event. We are live streamed, so hello to everybody who is watching on live stream. The board decided to live stream this Free Education Day because the topic this afternoon is so important, which is redistricting. We're going to be talking a lot about redistricting. So it was really important for us to be able to reach out to the members, even if they couldn't be here, because we had a limited registration for in person. Okay, so to mark your calendars moving forward, Master Academy. You know, last year we had to push a lot of institutes, we had to push masters, we had to push everything. So this year Master Academy is November 30th, December 1st, December 2nd. It is in Mount Pleasant. We are finalizing the agenda and the speakers for that. Registration will be coming out soon. I don't have an exact date, but we are working on an easy way to register and pay online through our new website. So just keep your ears open for that. We're gonna have a lot of really good sessions. Institute for next year. Who went to Institute this year in the room? That's a lot of people. We have a lot of newer clerks that are going through Institute. And I have to tell you, the 2 weeks that we have 2 separate weeks of Institute right now because we have so many people coming through the program. It was phenomenal. It was just fantastic. They were such good groups and we got such positive feedback from you know, all the attendees and stuff from looking at the reviews. So and next year's Institute, again, we're going to have 2 weeks of it. We had an inquiry as to whether or not we could do back-to-back weeks, right? And we are not going to do that kind of consolidated version that some people want. It's a 3-year program, so you go to one of the weeks every year. And then once the number of people kind of goes down and we reach all the clerks, the board may decide to go back to just 1 week every year, but we had we don't want to turn anybody away, and we had so much interest in Institute, which is why those of you who remember Master used to be the week after Institute, we had to move Master Academy to accommodate the 2 separate weeks of Institute. In any case, I know I'm rambling. So, Institute next week, you can select one of 2 weeks, March 13th through 18th, 2022, or March 20th through 25th, 2022. Mark your calendars for that. Conference, next year, we're happy to report we actually will have a conference, well, God willing, right? But conference is scheduled, as Holly had mentioned, June 14th through 17th. We will have a master class on, it says on here June 13th, but I think it's going to be June 14th on the Tuesday. And then Clerking 101 is actually June 13th and 14th, as Holly had indicated. And that is our Clerking 101 boot camp. Tomorrow there is a 1-day Clerking 101 session that was a separate registration. We weren't able to get a 2-day boot camp, but the 2-day boot camp is really, really helpful because it just gives you enough time to delve into the topics at length. Outside of that, does anybody have any education questions? No? Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here, and we look forward to seeing you at future events.
Thank you very much, Melanie. You do have to be fluid. You already know that. As a clerk, you have to be fluid and you roll with the stuff as it comes through the front door. That's kind of how your board has operated this last year, and it's been especially difficult for education. And having been your education chair for a number of years, I know how stressful and painful it was for Melanie last year. And my apologies, I should have introduced the whole board. You've got bits and pieces of it, but I'm going to start at the beginning. And if your board member, if you would please stand. Adam Witt is our first vice president. And Adam serves as co-chair of CEO. CEO is Council of Election Officials, and we co-chair that. It is a combined organization between county clerks and municipal clerks, and it is through that we have our lobbyist, which happens to be Bill Zagman from GCSI. Second vice president is Jackie Boudry. Jackie's responsibility appointed under our old bylaws was to be the legislative chair. And so Jackie has accompanied me in meetings and in testimony. The clerks around the city of Lansing frequently are the clerks that testify because their clerks are sometimes hours away. And that was also an issue in making some of the bylaw changes we did. Third vice president could not be here, Stephanie McMillan from the city of Grand Rapids. She's their deputy clerk. Stephanie is on vacation, enjoying herself. You heard from Leanne Scott, who is our treasurer, and director of Ways and Means, media relations. You heard from Michael. Media relations isn't his anymore. Not anymore. He's so happy. I have to update my sheets. Tina, I always slaughter your name. Prezantic. Tina is new to the board, and she is membership. You saw her up here. Conference chair, you saw Holly Thompson. Ooh, ooh. And vice chair is Rebecca Johnson, who is new to the board. Secretary is Lisa Lewitsky. And education chair, you just saw Melanie, and vice chair is Rochelle. And Chris Swope is our immediate past president. Chris ended up, this is kind of a legislative thing, but we had two bills that I'll talk about under the legislative update that we've really, really been pushing, wanting passed now because they can influence redistricting. And who would have thought the Wednesday before a holiday weekend when the Senate has not met all summer, they would have session today to take up those two bills. So Chris gave up his being present here and is on the live stream so that he can go testify today for those two bills. So appreciate Chris for that. Is there any new business? I have no idea what time it is. 9:51. Okay. No new business? Okay, we stand adjourned. So you're going to get the luxury of, we'll start a little early. We'll just bump everything up 15 minutes. So you got about 20-25 minutes right now. Silent auction, okay, and the padfolios. The padfolios have the MAMC emblem on them. They're really nice. You can buy those. The silent auction, I urge you to bid. That money goes and supports our PAC, and our PAC is what we use for our lobbying. So I urge you to spend some time at that table and spend money. Thank you.
Our voting winner, that's an 11, but these three tables here are reserved for you and your guests. So feel free, if your guests get here, have them come in and sit so that you know where you are. Sorry, you gotta walk in front of everybody, but have to check it out. That's Ryan, and I'll show you that.
So that was a good way for the president to get me on off the introduction. So next, I'm just kidding you. The next session is the MAMC board, as you know. So we've had a lot of, over the years, we've had a lot of members inquire or voice, that they don't really know what the board does. They don't know how to get on the board. They don't know what qualifications are. They don't know, kind of what we do and that sort of thing. So we talked about it at strategic planning last time we went, and we thought it might be good for us to present, tell you all of those things, so that if you are out here now and you might have an interest in serving on the board in the future, you know what that process looks like. So we are going to have Adam Witt, your first vice president, is going to share with you some aspects of the board and what it means to be on the board and how you can be involved. So, Adam.
All right, so I have a half hour here to do this. And I will try and fill it with informational stuff so I don't have to resort to dancing up here to fill time or singing because nobody wants that.
No.
So as Melanie said, we're sort of going to talk about the MAMC board and sort of in general what this organization does, because that's what the MAMC board does, to make sure that the organization can do what we need to do to support you guys. And you can tell a big part of what this board wants to do is make sure we're getting our member input and making sure everyone's feeling heard and part of the organization, because as we go through this as clerks, it's important as we're working together, as President Clark spoke about being we are one. That's why we put an hour and a half for our board meeting this morning, so nobody feels cut off. So if there is conversation, we can be involved. And we want to make sure that you feel like you have a path to be involved with the MAMC board. You know what that looks like, and you know how you can help support the organization. So again, my name is Adam Witt. I'm the first vice president. I'm the Harrison Township clerk. Been there since 2012. I'm currently serving as first vice president. So I serve on the CEO, the Council of Elected Officials. I've served on the MAMC board since 2017, including time as conference vice chair, which was a really cool job. So if you ever get on the board, that's really the job you get, because Holly does all the work and does it really well. And you just get to do like, oh, perfect, I'll do what Holly said. But I think the reason they asked me to come up here and do this presentation was to show to you, really, anybody can be up there. Anybody can do it. Adam can do it. Anybody. So I want to talk about what the board does, how we do it, why we do it, and how people get involved. So sometimes, I want to say, like, when I first came on, I had people come up to me and go, are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure? I heard things about the board. I heard this, I heard that. A lot of weird little stories, you know, half-truths, rumors from decades ago that were passed down through offices. You know, and I think it's important that we dispel some of that kind of thing, you know. One of the things I heard, we're actually a group of vampires. We're not. We have somebody that doesn't like garlic. That's not a reason they're a vampire. It just makes them really get sunburned. That's all. No, sorry. My wife said that was a bad joke, but I was wrong. We get, you know, another rumor, we get paid the big bucks to do this. We don't. We're volunteers who take time out of our day, over and above our normal jobs in clerk's offices that are just as busy as yours, to do this. The last rumor that I hear people talk about and say, you know, they hear about the board is that we don't need you. We do need you. We need volunteers. We need people to step up into positions after our time's done in these seats. We don't want this to be a reoccurring thing where you see the same people over and over. We want new people, new faces to be involved. So this should be something that you feel is accessible to you. So what do we actually do? As we talked earlier, the primary goals of MAMC are to provide high-quality educational opportunities for the best clerks in the country. The next thing that we do is advocate on behalf of our members in legislation and on rules that the Secretary of State makes. Those are the two highest priorities for this organization, and I think it's something that we do really well. And to help fill that out, the other things that we do are organize and maintain a professional certification through our MAMC program that I think is second to none. And as we started that program, back to when, sort of towards when I started as a clerk, we saw it picking up steam a little bit. But now every job posting I see, whether it's on MML's job board or our job posting, it has certification, you know, preferred, certification required. So you're seeing that become an industry standard that people are going to be looking for. That's something that through our high quality educational opportunities we're able to provide. Another thing is to communicate with and facilitate communication amongst our members. So if we don't tell you there's an issue in Lansing, you might not know. That might not be something you personally are in touch with. So we want to make sure that we reach out and talk to you and you feel like you're connected to what's happening. You don't want to be coming up to, maybe you're in a township and you're a little bit smaller, so you're only doing those 2 elections on even years. You don't want to come up to that August election and find out there was a change a year and a half ago and you didn't know. So we want to make sure that we're communicating with members and also providing a place for members to communicate with each other, whether that's in person at events like this or online at our Facebook page. That's why we made that Facebook page a private page that only our members can be involved in, so you guys have a safe space to say, I got to ask a stupid question. And we as clerks have answers to stupid questions because we went through those situations before, so it's a great opportunity to do that. And as we go through and finish our website updating and upgrade, we'll have those forums back up and, in a good place to be able to ask questions. So we want to make sure that we're still providing those types of things. So that's, and on top of that, the one thing that we do that's probably the least enjoyable of any of our things is actually just doing the nuts and bolts to keep this organization running, the day-to-day functions of just maintaining a professional organization. So how do we do it? It's a lot of hands-on work. This is a working board. We do employ GCSI's association support, but they don't do everything. There are some associations, and maybe you guys are familiar through maybe your treasurer or something like that. They hand off a lot of the work to professionals. We as clerks feel like it's important that we're involved in those day-to-day decisions and those day-to-day activities. So when, up until recently, we were the ones that were balancing every single thing in the checkbook as opposed to having some support. When we line up all our educational speakers, it's us contacting them, making those reach outs, and scheduling everything. But board members are assigned different jobs, and it's, as the president, you're trying to fill that role with somebody that wants to do that role. If when I came in, I moved everyone around and put somebody in a situation to fail, that's not what we want to do. That was part of the reason we had those bylaw changes before us earlier, so when somebody is on this board, we can look at that person and say, man, this person has a strength in whatever, and find the role for them. So if you do get involved, we're not going to put you on a job today. We'll talk to you, figure out where we can best use your skill set, and put you there. There are different demands for different jobs based on timing. If you would have tried to, when I was on conference, if you would have tried to talk to me the first couple of weeks of June, I would have been crabby and very short with you because I had a lot of stuff to do between, we're usually working on something with elections as well as prepping conference. So that was our busy time. You talked to me in August, I didn't care. I was done with conference. It was a long ways away. So every job has those cycles. Some of them are really busy at certain times, depending on what they are. If you're the secretary to the board, you got to write minutes to the board. As a clerk, we assume you could figure out how to write minutes, right? So it might be a little less of a time demand sometimes. So there's different roles for different people in different situations in their life. So why do we do it and why should you do it? As clerks, we should want to see our selected field succeed. To be a good place to attract quality people to come in after us. Make it a good place for us to want to stay. After we all got through with 2020, I know there was a lot of people, I know I said it, I said, man, what was I thinking? I should have ran for treasurer. But here we are. If you're here, it makes sense to be involved. The field's going to be shaped by the people that make their voices heard. So being involved in MAMC is an opportunity for you to make your voice heard. I can definitely say that we've had a lot of long and spirited discussions. So sometimes we'll come to an event like this, and I've heard people say like, "Oh, I heard the board's just a rubber stamp." No, we have, sometimes we have a 3-hour meeting discussing one big thing because we have a lot of different diverse viewpoints. We have communities that have single precincts. We have, the second largest city in the state on there too, and everything in between. So there's no one-size community that's there. There's no one-size person that's there. But why do the 13 members that are on the board do it? Because we like it. We like being clerks, and we want you guys to like it. We want you guys to succeed, and we want to support you. So this is an opportunity for people to be involved. And I have 15 more minutes, so I'm going to slow down talking. And if anyone has any questions, at the end, I'll open it to any question, any dumb questions, or anything that can drag out an extra 10 minutes. Yeah, smart questions too. We'll take any of the questions. Smart? Yeah. But how can you get involved? I'll share my story a little bit. So I had been a clerk for maybe 4 years, and I thought that's not for me. That's for people that have been here for a long time. That's not for me. But I got involved on legislative committee, serving as an alternate on CEO, and I found like, no, this is for me. They need me. I had one of the board members who was outgoing at that time said, why don't you apply for the board position? And I thought, like, man, that's weird to sort of put yourself out there. And, but I'm glad I did. I'm glad I get to be involved. I'm glad I get to help this organization. So what does that look like for you? Maybe it's running for the board right away. Maybe that's what you want to do. Do it. There isn't a barrier to entry other than being a member in good standing. If maybe that's too much, if that's diving into the deep end and you'd rather wade in, we got a ton of great committees that you can volunteer to serve on. Whether it's education committee, you can help out during conference. Conference committee always is looking for people to help with setup and support for the events that we pull off during that. So, start easy. Serve on legislative committee. That's a great way to stay in touch with what's changing, what's going on in the clerk's world. And I can tell you right now, it is one of the most entertaining places to see, because you get to see when Mary comes in and vents her entire frustration with the state legislature for a solid 20 minutes. It is a show to be seen. You need to sign up and be there. And oftentimes we'll get, I don't know how to say it, not really pushback, but questions about why we went in a direction we did. Well, because the 14 or 16 people that show up for legislative, that's where we were. And if you're not involved in those decisions, if you're not there, your opinion gets missed sometimes. We try and keep in mind that we have a very diverse group of people that we're representing. And unfortunately, sometimes people feel like that those things aren't for them. It is for them. We need somebody that has a community of 1,000 people to be involved, because that's a perspective that not a lot of people have. We need somebody with that mid-sized community. If you're a village clerk, be involved. We need that diversity of viewpoints, so don't ever feel like this isn't something for you. MAMC exists to serve the membership, and we're best served when the membership is involved. So, I don't know if I didn't cover anything, or if you have anything to add here.
I would say the one thing when I was legislative chair, and I think other legislative chairs have done the same, is we look at, because we do want to balance when we pick who's sitting on different committees, where it is really important that we have wide representation. So we did rein in the number of voting members of legislative a few years ago, because we had so many people sign up and then they didn't come, or they would come once every fourth meeting and want to re-debate a bill that we had already taken action on. So we want people engaged, but it is, Adam said, it is a working board and they're working committees. If you're looking for a resume builder, you need to look for a different organization. You will build your resume with this, but you will build your resume with a lot of experience. I have to say also, the majority of senators and representatives that sit on the House or Senate Education Committee really have learned to have a great deal of respect for MAMC. They care, most of them care what position we take on a bill and the why. When we testify, we always will state our position, but it's important that those sitting there listening to us understand the why of our position. Whether we're supporting a bill or opposed to a bill, we have to be able to clearly and concisely articulate the why for our position. So it is, you will have so many opportunities for growth if you get engaged. And I'm very fortunate. As I said earlier, I've been down over 20 times, and I'm not talking about 15-minute things, I'm talking about 2 to 3 to 4 hours at a time for each of those. I'm very fortunate to be in a community that is very supportive of my engagement, my office staff who are here. I give them a shout out because when I'm gone, they have to pick up the pieces. They have to cover everything. They have to cover the phones without me taking any of the calls or the counter and that, and it makes a difference. And I realize it's a challenge if you're in a 1 or 2 person office, but I'm going to use Lisa Lewitsky as an example. Lisa is the elected clerk, but she's part-time because she's in a small community that doesn't have 40-hour-a-week office hours. And she makes it work because she is a good time manager and she can adjust her work life around this volunteer life. So even if you're not a full-time clerk, your engagement is important, and it is possible if you choose to make it possible.
And I will just add to that, we obviously, as everyone has, grown to love virtual meetings, but if the stumbling block is getting to Lansing for some of the meetings, we have been, sort of expanding the ability to Zoom or call in. So, obviously, we all think in person is better, but we understand that sometimes life happens. You say, man, the only way I can get in there is if I phone call or if I Zoom this month. So, we do want to be accommodating of different people's needs because we do get that it's a drive for some people. If it's one of our December meetings, it's dicey driving out to Lansing sometimes, right? So, we do take that into mind. So how do you get on the board? How do you say yes? How do you stand up, raise your hand, and say I want to be involved? So usually around the time, it's usually in end of February, beginning of March, we'll send out requests for nominations that go out to all our members. It also goes out usually in our newsletter, depending on timing for that, that we're looking for people to fill in positions. And we'll say, hey, we have X spots available, and we have, usually we have, 2 running every, right, no, 4. 4 running every 2, so 4 seats are up every year for the director position. So we'll always have 2 city/county and 2 township/village positions available. And we'll usually try, sometimes the question we get is, well, I would have ran, but I didn't know who else was running. Well, we do try and share if somebody's running for re-election, so you can decide whether or not, like, I really like what Adam's doing, so I don't want to run against him. He's a good guy. I think he's all right. Not that anyone would say that. But, we want to make sure that I know some people would feel weird. I didn't realize I was going to end up running against my friend. I didn't want to do that. So we do try and say if we have open available seats, that way maybe you're a little more comfortable running. So we try and share that. Not that you can't run against anybody. That's an option too. Not to preclude it, but I think sometimes people feel maybe awkward about that. So then usually end of April-ish is when that nomination process is closed. And then we hold an election at our conference, normally, to fill those positions. And then once that vote happens at conference, you're on the board. And I can tell you, it's been a great experience for me. It's helped deepen some of those connections with the board as well as membership because it forces me to be involved in more MAMC stuff. So maybe I might be on the fence about attending something, but this forces me to do it, but in a good way. Sort of gives me that excuse to tell work, like, yeah, I'm gonna go do that. So it's a great opportunity to expand your involvement in the organization as well. And then as far as committees, usually we'll send out a call for applications in August after that election process, after we close out the board elections. So we'll put out that call for election or people to serve on those committees. Fill out that form and we'll be in contact with you. And if in the meantime you think like, man, I really would have liked to have been involved, fill out the application and send it in. It's on our website. You can send it over to GCSI and they'll make sure it gets to the appropriate board and we'll be in touch with you to get you involved. As far as I know, we've never said no to help. So we want to make sure that everyone can be involved as much as they want to be. So, are there any questions? That's all I got. Thank you guys very much and hope we enjoy the rest of the day.
Who all wants to be on the board now? I,
Oh, come on, don't all raise your hands at once.
come on.
Come on, everyone should have said, I can do better than him.
We have been made aware that the Secretary of State is running a little behind and she was to be here for the Cody Award presentations. So we're gonna, I don't know what time it is. We're gonna take about a 12-minute break. This is a great time we can learn so much from each other. You know what we'll do with this time instead? First of all, I failed to say past presidents in the room. You know, there's at least one because I saw Dan. If there are past presidents in the room, would you please stand? Because you earned a round of applause. Thank you, thank you. And the other thing I'm going to ask you is, who has some really brief but impactful lesson learned from the 2020 election? I will start and tell you I had the only state race recount. And House of Representatives, there was an over 2,000 vote margin, which gives you some indication of why one candidate lost and one didn't, because no recount is going to give you 2,000 plus votes in our system. So we do. It was right. It was in December at the height of COVID. So then there was threats of lawsuits, and I had to have the sheriffs there 3 times for some people's inappropriate behavior. They missed what it is. They did not go to school to learn how to be an adult. So that was my excitement from 2020. If someone else has something to add, you can go to a mic.
Yeah, there are 2 mics in the room. There's one over here and one over here. Please make sure you go to the mic to speak, otherwise we won't be able to hear you.
It's not on, Mason.
Okay. The city of Lovington had a recount as well in December, and shall we help us out with that, Michelle? Thank you. And I think what we did helped the residents of Mason County and know what the process is and gave them a better idea that what we did was we set up our electronic whiteboard. We kicked the piece on the table and we were able to show every ballot to all the people that attended this recount, and they could see the vote was for one, it was a city council seat, and they were able to see the vote for each and every candidate. And they were the comments we got afterwards were really great because they understood the process and they appreciated the fact that the vote was right on. I mean, one of the candidates got 2 extra votes because of the way the SMS system had picked up did not pick up a 10 trick of a vote, and it was counted in the recount. So I just want to let you know that if you're looking for a way for to show all the residents your votes and the process, that might be a way to set up an electronic whiteboard and have them be able to view it themselves.
Interesting, thank you. Lisa?
I don't have any specific awesome thing we did, but I was involved with that recount that Mary talked about and another one that we had in our county. And I would suggest to anyone here, if you have a chance to get involved in a recount, do it. It's an amazing learning experience.
Thank you, it is. I had worked the recount a couple times before. I had had one on a county commission seat, and I worked one for a city in my county, so I had a couple under my belt, so I understood what the process was going to be. It was just a little more theatrical than the others had been. But it is really, and your county clerk is responsible for recounts ultimately, and so they do always need someone to help. So, yeah.
Susan Nash, City of Livonia. So nothing specific, didn't have a recount, but had our own special kind of fun in Livonia. But most importantly, what I want to tell everyone, the most important thing we can do as clerks is support each other. That is something we found in Wayne County, and I hope in other counties too. When you have issues, reach out to each other. If you have questions, reach out. Because we can't all be expected to know everything all the time, right? But maybe your neighbor does. And maybe your neighbor's experienced something already, and they can help you. So it's not anything specific, but most importantly, we're all in this together. We've got another election coming up, cities. The next year, we have another statewide, and before we know it, 2024 will be here again, okay? And some of us are still reliving 2020 because we want to go away. It's the gift that keeps on giving. But we have to stick together, and we have to support each other. So if you have questions, reach out to your fellow clerk, your next door neighbor. No one knows what you're going through more than the clerk next door to you. So that's all I gotta say is just stick together.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, my name's KP Mahoney. I'm from the city of Montague.
Go into the mic a little more, KP.
How's this? Better?
Better.
Better. I just wanted to share that one of the things that we did, seeing the quote shit show starting to happen last year, is we had our board passed a resolution thanking and honoring all of our election inspectors, and that was our city council. And we had certificates then that all of our council members and mayor signed and gave to these wonderful people who are bipartisan and do the Lord's work for the benefit of all of us to have free and fair elections. And then we also had the county commission wrote a resolution based on the one that we did. We asked them to, and they passed it. And we have 2 county commissioners then that wanted to secede from the county later, and we reminded them that they, the one that he had supported this free and fair election resolution, and that passed on November 19th. So we did that early on, and I just want to recognize you all. In the newsletter, I saw that you too passed a resolution thanking the election workers. So I don't think we can say enough to people. The elections are free and fair, and they're managed by those among us who are registered voters, and we invite you to join us as election inspectors. Go through the process, fill out an application. So, thank you.
The board
did, and I give Stephanie McMillan credit for being lead on this, and Stephanie's not here to hear her accolades, but Stephanie is the one that brought forward the resolution that we, the board ultimately, that we did pass, because we do feel that it is important that the world know that we pride ourselves on our work and our professionalism and our ethics, and that we do stick together. I think a lot of people don't think that the criticism of elections falls on us, but it does. When you have someone that's criticizing the elections or the election outcome, they're criticizing us and our profession. So we felt very strongly about sending that message. Anyone else have something to share? You want to go to the mic, please?
Tina Rayco, Redford Township, and a lot of you may not be aware of the fact that we were locked out of our office in 2020 in the August election, 11 days before Election Day. We can guide you. I don't know how we made it through. We pulled off the election 5 days before. If it ever happens to any of you, you're more than welcome to reach out.
Thank you.
I hope it doesn't.
Yeah.
What
That means you were
It's
locked
a
out.
long story.
Now, where are we at on,
I don't know what time it is, so what time is it? 11. So,
okay, so we have a little.
So my understanding is that Secretary Benson will be here at about 11:15. So if we want to take a quick 10-minute break, let the Cody guests come in and take their seat.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
So I think I tried to talk to people that were coding and having people coming. These 3 front tables that have reserved signs on them are for you and your guests. So quick 10 and be back. Thank you.